Can emotions be measured? Chapter 1. The Shape of a Feeling. On a Tuesday evening in late summer, a singer named Mara stood in the wings of a small theater, palms damp, heart skipping like a stone over a lake. A stagehand clipped a tiny sensor to her finger, a black dot the size of a sunflower seed that would stream her pulse to the soundboard so the engineer could time a dramatic light cue with the first crescendo. On a laptop, a green line rose and fell, then spiked. The instant the MC said her name, backstage nerves rendered as electricity, anticipation graphed, a human tremor translated into numbers. "Looks good," the engineer whispered, as if a sudden surge in heart rate could be good or bad in the way a cable connection might be. But he was right in a more important sense. The line moved. There was a pattern. Something in Mara had caught fire, and the screen felt a little like a hearth you could warm your hands by. And yet, did we actually measure her emotion? We caught her heart racing, yes. But if she had been sprinting up the stairs instead of about to sing the song she wrote when her father died, that same green line would have spiked. In one story, the spike means fear braided with hope and yearning. In another, it means the muscles wanted more oxygen. The number alone cannot tell the difference. Still, it was a beginning, a signal. This is the first truth about measuring emotions. They are not objects we place on a scale, but constellations we triangulate from light years of signals, each a different color. The second truth is that we keep trying not because we are naive, but because the attempt itself remakes the way we know one another and the way we know ourselves. So, can emotions be measured? Yes, if we accept that to measure means to bring a hidden pattern into a form that can be compared, communicated, and tested again. Yes, if we refuse to demand a single, perfect number and instead build a mosaic of partial, overlapping, sometimes stubborn pieces. And yes, if we remember that numbers are lenses, not faces. To get there, we will first walk through the difficulty, then the instruments, then the language that lets us make sense of what the instruments say. The difficulty of measuring invisible things. A rock has weight. You can hang it from a scale, read the dial, and barring some mischief of wind or water, several people will arrive at the same figure. Emotions are not rocks. They are processes, fast, distributed, embedded in bodies and histories, bubbling up from childhood and culture, conditioned by hormones and sleep, colored by recent memory and anticipated futures. Even naming an emotion changes it. Try sitting quietly and whispering, "I am angry," then, "I am grieving," and watch what your chest does each time. Because emotions are processes, not objects, we cannot weigh them, but we can measure their signatures and their consequences. Consider a lightning storm. You do not scoop thunder into a jar. You watch the sky alter. You see the tree it strikes and the footprints it illuminates for one white instant. Measurement here is triangulation. Time between flash and thunder, strength of the gusts, voltmeter readings on a fence. With emotions, we do something similar. We measure changes in physiology, behavior, and report. We look for coherence among these strands and consistency across moments and people. The key concept is operationalization. Instead of saying, "measure joy," we say, "when we elicit joy with a funny film, we will measure one self-reported joy on a validated scale. 2. Zygomatic major activation, the cheek muscle involved in smiling, via electromyography, 3. Heart rate variability, and 4. An observer's rating of joyful behavior using a standardized coding scheme. This is awkward language. It is also honest. It says, "This is what I mean, in practice, by joy." Today, in this context, with these tools, operationalization isn't cynicism. It is a craftsman's humility. Define, measure, compare, refine, measure, compare again. 3 windows: report, behavior, body. Imagine 3 windows into the house of emotion. Through the first, you ask the person inside what it feels like to be there. Through the second, you watch what they do. Through the third, you listen for the machines humming in the basement. Each window distorts. Each admits different light. Together, they let you sketch the floor plan. Window 1. Self-report. Language is a measurement tool. When someone says, "I feel a tightness here," like a fist, while pressing 2 fingers on the sternum, they are giving you a topography. Psychologists turn this map-making into instruments questionnaires with items like, "I feel restless," or "I feel at ease," rated from 1 to 5. The best of these scales are built like bridges. Test the beams for reliability. Do they hold the same weight tomorrow? And validity, do they span what they claim to span? Self-report is direct, versatile, and indispensable. It is also vulnerable. People can misremember, misattribute, or mask. Culture reshapes the palette of words available and the ease or shame attached to them. The language of emotions is full of borrowed metaphors: light, heat, pressure, taste. This borrowing is not a flaw. It is how we reach into the ineffable and pull something we can hold. But it means that any scale must be read with care. What calm means in one person's mouth is not quite what it means in another's. Window 2. Behavior. The face, the voice, the body. Here measurement becomes choreography and statistics. Facial action coding systems break expressions into muscle units. Inner brow raiser, lip corner puller, and observers code the dance frame by frame. Voice analysis tracks pitch, amplitude, tempo, shimmer. Posture is quantified. The angle of a spine as worry deepens, the speed of a head turn as anger sharpens, the micro-stillness that precedes a sob. In laboratories, surprise looks like eyebrows leaping in uncanny symmetry, and joy clusters around the eyes more than the mouth. Behavior is rich and immediate. It is also laced with social rules. A smile can be a mask. A steady voice can be trained. Some cultures amplify expression, others prize restraint. And then there is acting. An actor can make your scalp prickle with fear. Does that mean they are afraid? Perhaps not. Perhaps yes, in a way. Perhaps something like fear is summoned for the body to mimic and the audience to metabolize. Measurement, again, must be cautious. When we measure behavior, we measure both the feeling and the performance of the feeling. Window 3. Body. Electrodermal activity tells you about sweat glands waking under sympathetic nervous system command. Heart rate variability, HRV, reveals the rhythmic tug-of-war between sympathetic, go, and parasympathetic, rest control. Higher variability often suggests flexibility, the capacity to pivot, a physiological correlate of resilience. Breathing patterns shift, shallow when anxious, deep and slow when at ease. Pupils dilate with arousal. Hands grow cold as blood retreats to the organs that would carry you from a threat. Then there is the brain recorded with EEG for speed, fMRI for location, and other methods for more specialized insights. Patterns emerge. The amygdala lights when we detect salient, often threatening cues. The insula participates in the way body feelings breach into awareness. Prefrontal regions help regulate the surge and shape a response. Listen long enough, and you hear rhythms too. Alpha waves pulsing with relaxation, beta waves pricking with focus, theta surfacing in memory and drift. All of this is measurable. None of it is emotion itself. It is the weather of the nervous system through which emotions move. The two axes and the many names. To organize this excess, scientists sometimes reduce feelings to coordinates on two axes: valence, pleasant to unpleasant, and arousal, calm to excited. In this model, amusement and awe live in the pleasant half but at different arousal levels. Calm gratitude floats near the pleasant calm corner. Panic leaps toward unpleasant excited. The model is blunt and it is useful. It helps integrate body metrics. Many bodily measures track arousal better than valence, and behavior smiles often signal positive valence. With report, "I feel keyed up, but not bad." But many of us experience emotions as more than coordinates. Anger tastes different from fear, even if both are unpleasant and arousing. Discrete emotion theories say that difference matters. They look for signatures that belong to particular states, a tendency for certain muscle patterns in disgust, for example, or a family of appraisals. My goals are blocked by an agent who could have done otherwise in anger. Constructed emotion theories, on the other hand, argue that the brain builds feelings from basic ingredients, core effect, and concept knowledge, much like language constructs meaning from sounds. Under this view, what gets measured are the ingredients and the assembly rules. The specific emotion term is a label we learn and apply with increasing precision. You do not need to pick a single camp to measure wisely. If you accept that different contexts produce different patterns, you can still collect, compare, and refine. If anger sometimes looks like fear in the body but not in the appraisals, you can build instruments that respect that complexity. The action is in the triangulation, the problem of ground truth. To validate any measurement, you need a standard. That standard is called ground truth, the thing you trust enough to compare new instruments against. With a thermometer, ground truth can be the melting point of ice or the boiling point of water, used to calibrate the scale. With emotions, ground truth is elusive. Do we treat the person's own report as truth? The observer's judgment? A neural pattern? An outcome? Who withdraws? Who approaches? Who forgives? Pragmatists use multiple anchors. If three different ways of measuring point in the same direction, confidence increases. This is convergent validity. At the same time, good instruments know what they are not measuring. A fear scale should not mistake mere arousal for fear. It should diverge from excitement as much as it converges with anxiety. This is discriminant validity. Building such instruments is slow, often unglamorous work. Hundreds of participants, reliability checks, factor analyses, cross-cultural testing, but it yields tools that travel inside the laboratory box. Picture a soundproof room. On the table, a set of clips and bands, a chest strap for respiration, a finger cuff for skin conductance, electrodes for facial muscles, a cap for EEG. On the screen, a set of stimuli. The classic tear-jerk scene, the spider close-up, the winning goal. The participant sits, breathes, watches, numbers flow. In this environment, researchers can control variables and test hypotheses. Does a certain appraisal reliably precede anger? Does HRV drop before someone reports feeling overwhelmed? Does lateral frontal activation rise with reappraisal, the cognitive strategy of reframing a situation to reduce negative emotion? Laboratory work is the forge where theories are hammered into shape, but boxes have walls. What a film elicits in a chair is not always what a marriage elicits in a kitchen or a hospital elicits in a 3 a.m. corridor. Enter ecological momentary assessment, EMA. Ping people in their daily lives, ask brief questions about their current feelings, and sometimes pair those with wearable data. The watch notes the pulse spike at 2:17 p.m. The prompt at 2:19 asks, "What are you feeling right now?" The GPS knows you are at the courthouse. The microphone knows the room is loud. The calendar knows your hearing date. These layers triangulate a life in motion. In such studies, measurement becomes choreography across time. Patterns unfold, a reliable slump after lunch, a slow reactivity on days with poor sleep, a fierce surge during commutes. The researcher sees not only what emotions are, but how they change. A whole ecology, not a snapshot. The polygraph myth and the truth about arousal. At this point, many people ask about the lie detector. If a machine can tell whether you are lying, surely it can measure your emotion. The answer, famously, is that polygraphs measure arousal, sweaty palms, quickened heart, tight breathing, and infer deception if arousal spikes during certain questions. A spike proves that something in the person has spiked. Concern, fear, anger, embarrassment, surprise. But deception is a story we tell about why the body moved. The machine does not know that story. Under pressure, many stories will provoke the same surge. This matters because much of emotional physiology is like the polygraph, a sensitive alarm, not a detective. Skin conductance is a beautiful alarm. It tells you the person is stirred. It does not tell you stirred by what. To measure emotions well, we pair alarms with context and content. We ask what was happening when the alarm rang and what the person took that event to mean. When numbers touch, meaning return to Mara backstage. Suppose that green line had been recorded 100 times across rehearsals and shows, fights with friends, and lazy Sunday breakfasts. Suppose her journal app had a slider for anticipatory dread and electric hope, and she moved them with her thumb a few times a day. Suppose her phone tracked sleep and her blood test tracked cortisol. Over a season, we might learn that her pre-show spikes had distinct shapes, a steep climb when she felt exposed and under-rehearsed, a gentler swell when she felt eager, a barely perceptible ripple when she felt numb. We might discover that when the spike was steep, her opening notes were sharp. When it was gentle, her audience cried more. We might even find that a certain breathing pattern, practiced for 3 minutes, flattened the steep ones into gentle hills. Measurement becomes meaning when it becomes useful, not when it produces the cleanest number, but when it helps a person predict, regulate, communicate, or create. This shift from numbers as trophies to numbers as tools reframes the ethical question too. Measuring emotions changes power. Who holds the data? Who gets to use it? What if a boss tracks your frustration from your keystrokes? What if an app pings your sadness before you can name it? What if a government scans a crowd for anger? A measurement that helps a singer find her breath can, in other hands, become a lever on a life we will come back to ethics. First, we should examine a few of the most common instruments in more detail, not as gadgets, but as extensions of human attention. Instruments of feeling. The questionnaire as telescope. The simplest instruments are often the most durable. Scales like the positive and negative affect schedule, PANAS, or state trait anxiety measures are, in essence, telescopes built of words. Their power lies in design, items that cluster where they should, diverge where they must, and yield consistent readings across time and place. When researchers build a new telescope, they test its optics. Does it magnify the thing we intend, or does it introduce a warp? Good self-report instruments also respect time. A state scale asks, "How do you feel right now?" A trait scale asks, "How do you feel in general?" Confusing the two is like confusing weather and climate. We need both. Facial coding as map making. Trained coders can watch a silent video and mark the exact second a lip corner tugs or a nose wrinkles. Machine vision now learns these codes too, albeit imperfectly, across different faces and cultures. The faces of the world carry different histories. Algorithms, trained on narrow sets of data, can falter. A wise measurer treats machine inferences as drafts, not verdicts, and keeps humans in the loop. Still, the face is a marvel of readable muscle. Even infants track it, even dogs. When we measure expressions, we are not only reading another's feeling, we are studying the choreography by which one nervous system conducts another. Voice and movement as seismographs. The voice betrays more than words, the body more than voice. Consider tremor, cadence, timbre. Consider the gait of someone after bad news, the way their heel meets the floor more softly, as if reluctant to commit to the earth. Sensors can capture these micro changes. Accelerometers in a pocket, microphones in a room, gyroscopes in a watch. No single number says sorrow, but collections of small, reliable numbers can sketch the territory where sorrow tends to wander. HRV, breath, and the autonomic score. We are symphonies conducted by two branches of an ancient system. The sympathetic section drives the crescendos. The parasympathetic brings the strings down to pianissimo. HRV is the sheet music we can read to see how the conductor moves. When variability is rich, small accelerations and decelerations of the heart between beats, the system tends to be flexible, able to meet stress and return. When variability is flat, the system may be stuck at one volume too loud or too quiet. Breath joins this score. Slow, extended exhalations recruit vagal pathways that tilt the body toward calm. Short, rapid breaths stack arousal. If you measure little else, breath and HRV tell you much about the stage upon which emotions play. Brain signals as weather radar. EEG catches the flash. fMRI shows the terrain. Together they reveal pathways rather than proof. We know that certain networks coordinate attention to salient stimuli, others integrate visceral signals into conscious feeling, others modulate impulses with context and goals. We also know that the same region can participate in very different feelings depending on the pattern it participates in, like a violinist playing in a dirge 1 hour and a reel the next. So we read patterns. We train decoders not to label sadness in the brain, but to predict a person's later choices from their moment-to-moment states. We ask not, where is the emotion, but how does information flow when the person feels this way? When the goal is to help someone regulate, flow matters more than spot, craft, not magic. If measuring emotion sounds complicated, that is because it is a craft, not a trick. The craftsman gathers, cross-checks, adapts, like a physician combining a patient's narrative with a physical exam, lab values, and a scan. An emotion scientist or a designer of a product that cares for people's moods makes sense from multiple, imperfect sources. This is messier than a single number. It is also closer to the truth. A small story. A teacher notices that a boy named Leo shuts down during math practice. She installs a simple system. Every day, Leo circles how his body feels on a 2-axis map: calm, amped, bad, good. A smartwatch logs his pulse and breath. Together they discover that when his arousal rises past a certain threshold and his valence dips below neutral, he needs 2 minutes of wall push-ups, then a joke, then a return to the problem. The joke is not decoration. It changes the valence axis. The push-ups are not punishment. They discharge the arousal. Within weeks, his shutdowns decrease, and he completes his work with less suffering. Did she measure his emotion? Not in the sense of pinning it to a board, but she measured the shape of the storm that preceded it and built lightning rods. Craft emerges from patterns, and patterns emerge from care. We are tempted to outsource this care to machines. Resist that temptation. Invite the machines to be apprentices. Steady hands, keen eyes, long memories. Keep humans as masters of meaning, what we risk and what we gain. To measure an emotion is to take a stand on what a human is. Are we a body emitting signals that can be parsed and optimized? Are we a soul whose inwardness cannot be translated? We are both and neither. We are narratives written on nervous systems, and we are nervous systems that learn to speak their stories. Measurement is one dialect of that speech. The gains are real. When a person learns that their panic attacks are preceded by subtle changes in CO2 levels from breath holding, they can practice different breathing and cut off the spiral before it climbs. When a product designer learns that users' frustration rises at a specific mismatch between help text and error state, they change the words and the experience improves. When a couple learns that one partner's shutdown is body-driven rather than disdain-driven, they argue differently, more tenderly, with timed breaks. The risks are real, too. Surveillance catechized as care is still surveillance. An employer that tracks engagement through keystrokes and webcam micro-expressions is claiming ownership of the worker's inner weather. A state that scans crowds for anger may mistake celebration for uprising or label justified grief as threat. We must bind our instruments to consent, transparency, and the person's own benefit. We must also remember how measurement shapes experience. If you measure your sadness 3 times a day, you may become more literate about sadness, or you may feed it. If you watch your HRV like a stock ticker, you may learn to recover, or you may add a new anxiety. The craft involves dosing, not just what we measure, but when, how often, and why. The answer, stated plainly: can emotions be measured? Emotions can be measured the way melodies can be transcribed, not by catching the song in your hands, but by scoring the notes that make it sing. We can measure what bodies do when feelings move through them. We can measure the stories people tell when feelings visit. We can measure the consequences actions chosen, relationships mended or frayed. We can build instruments that are reliable, valid, and compassionate. We can test them in labs, take them into homes and schools and clinics, revise them when they fail, and keep them light enough to carry. But we should never mistake the score for the performance or the performance for the person. Measurement is a way of paying attention, not a license to replace attention with arithmetic. In the next chapter, we will step from principles to practice. How to build a living toolkit for measuring emotions in the world on stage and in classrooms, in hospitals, and at kitchen tables without losing the very thing we set out to honor. We will watch people like Mara turn numbers into breath, teachers turn graphs into grace, designers turn feedback into less frustration, and lovers turn self-knowledge into kinder fights. We will also walk the ethical tightrope with our eyes open, because every instrument is a trust. For now, imagine the green line backstage. Imagine the spike softer, the breath deeper, the first note truer. Imagine measurement not as judgment, but as a hand on the dimmer switch, learning how to light the room where the feeling lives. Chapter 2. The Toolkit of Tender Measures. The night after the green spike, Mara tried something simple. 10 minutes before her set, she stepped into the alley behind the theater, where the smell of rain still hung in the cracks, and put one hand on her ribs and one hand on her belly. She watched her breath move fast, high, shallow, and she thought, what would it feel like to make a little more room? She inhaled gently through her nose for a count of 4, paused for 1, exhaled for a count of 6, paused for 1, repeated. The pulse on the laptop inside softened its zigs and zags. The engineer didn't need to say, "Looks good." She could feel it. There was no spell, no hack, just a tension made visible, then movable. This is where measuring emotions becomes craft, not a hunt for one grand number, but a habit of small, humane instruments that help you shape your day. In this chapter, we build that toolkit. It will not promise certainty. It will promise usefulness. It will be as practical as a pocket knife and as gentle as a hand on a shoulder. We will collect a set of tools across 3 layers, self-report, behavior, and body, and then bundle them into living routines for different worlds. On stage, in classrooms and clinics, in design studios and kitchens, in city streets and quiet bedrooms. Along the way, we will learn how to keep our measures honest, our interpretations humble, and our ethics bright. A field guide to gentle instruments. Think of this as a backpack. Each tool has a label, a use case, a warning, and a way to practice. 1. Words as meters, micro-journals, and emotion maps. What it is. A fast, regular way to mark how you feel. 2. Classics. A 2-axis affect grid. Valence from bad-good on the x-axis, arousal from low-high on the y-axis, and a short checklist of feelings. For example, calm, tense, hopeful, irritated, rated 1-5. How to use. Pick a cadence, morning, midday, evening, plus 1 moment of spike entry when something big happens. Give each entry 30 seconds. On the grid, tap your spot. On the list, rate your top 3 feelings. Add 1 sentence of context. On the train, crowded, running late. What it tells you. Your personal weather, not diagnosis. Patterns. Do you trend high arousal? Negative during commutes? Does your Sunday evening valence dip? Are you more optimistic after you see a friend? Warning. Do not let the act of measurement colonize your day. If you find yourself watching yourself instead of living, reduce frequency. If it makes you ruminate, add a countervailing "what helped" line. Practice. 4 weeks. At the end of each week, circle 1 pattern that surprised you and 1 action to try. 2. behavior as mirror, expression, voice, and posture notes. What it is: a practice of observing and sometimes recording the outward signs that ride with your inner weather. How your face moves, how your voice carries, how you hold your spine. How to use? Choose one context. For Mara, it was rehearsals. For Leo, the student, it was math hour. For a team lead, it might be a weekly meeting. Record a short sample audio or video with consent or use a mirror, then annotate. I talk 30% faster when I'm anxious. My shoulders creep toward my ears. My smile tightens on one side when I'm annoyed. Pair this with one small cue you can feel: jaw tension, breath rate. And one small action you can do: drop shoulders on the exhale, pause 2 beats before the next sentence. What it tells you: the choreography you perform when feeling states arrive, and the entry points to shift them. Warning: culture and habit shape expression. Do not police yourself into masks. Use the observations to support communication, not suppress it. Practice. Before a known trigger performance, tough conversation, scan jaw, breath, shoulders, pace. Adjust one knob, 10%. After, jot one line. Slowed my first sentence. Room felt calmer. 3. Body as compass. Breath, HRV, and autonomic rhythm. What it is: a way to listen to the autonomic score that underlies much of feeling life. Your breathing pattern and the variability between heartbeats. How to use: without devices. Count breaths per minute at rest. Notice the length of exhale versus inhale. Try 4-1-6 breathing for 3 minutes and note the effect. With devices, watch, strap, track resting heart rate and HRV at roughly the same time daily. After similar sleep-wake habits. Mark sleep quality and illness. What it tells you: your baseline reactivity and recovery. How travel, sleep, caffeine, screens, and social context shift your readiness to ride emotions without being drowned by them. Warning: HRV is not a moral score. High is not good, low is not bad out of context. Illness, age, and genetics matter. Treat trends, not single points, as signals. Do not catastrophize daily dips. Practice. Pair 3 minutes of exhale-lengthened breathing before events that normally spike you. Note whether the first minute of speech or action changes. Adjust. Meaning as lens, appraisals, and stories. What it is: the frame you put around a moment. Many emotions are seeded by appraisals. Is this situation controllable? Did someone cause this on purpose? Am I safe? Does this matter to my goals? How to use: in spikes, write the first appraisal that arises. They disrespected me on purpose. Then write 2 alternatives that are plausible, not saccharine. They were rushed and sloppy. They didn't understand the context. Rate how each appraisal makes you feel: valence, arousal. Choose the one that allows skillful action. What it tells you: how your meaning maker steers your nervous system. How changing the story when the facts allow changes the body. Warning: do not gaslight yourself. Reappraisal is not denial. If harm is real, the skill is boundary, not reframing. Practice. Keep a 3 appraisals note in your pocket. Use it once per day for 2 weeks, even in small annoyances. Notice how often your body follows your story. 5. The trigger routine reward map. What it is: a behaviorist sketch of emotion-driven loops. Trigger, cue, routine, action, reward, state change. Measuring loops shows where to edit. How to use. Pick one recurring emotional storm, doom scrolling when lonely, sharp tone when rushed. Write the loop, trigger, notifications ping at night, routine, scroll for an hour, reward, numbness, then regret. Test an alternate routine that yields a similar reward. Text one friend. Set a 10-minute timer to read fiction. Measure success by how you feel after, what it tells you. Your nervous system is not a tyrant but a negotiator. Give it a better deal, and many storms soften. Warning: rewards must fit you, not ideals. If silence agitates you, do not prescribe meditation as a first step. Choose movement or music. Practice. One loop at a time. One edit per week. One honest check-in after. Social as censor. Trusted others and co-regulation. What it is. People who can reflect you back to yourself and whose nervous systems can help tune yours. Measurement here is mutual and conversational. How to use. Select one or two mirrors who consent to help. Agree on signals and suggestions. When my voice gets tight, point to your own jaw. When I start speaking too fast, put your palm down as a cue to slow. Debrief briefly. When you did X, I felt Y. Next time, try Z, what it tells you. You do not have to regulate alone. Emotions are relational. Measurement can be, too. Warning: choose people who are kind and grounded. Avoid using partners as constant barometers. It can feel like surveillance. Consent and reciprocity are the ethics here. Practice. 2 weeks of cues in one context, dinner with family, rehearsal, daily stand-up, then assess. Helpful or intrusive? Adjust. Minimal viable lab. Design your own micro-study. What it is. A formal way to try something and see if it matters. Your own miniature experiment. How to use. Define a question. Does a 3-minute breath practice change my first verse pitch accuracy? Define measures. Self-rated confidence, 1-10. A simple acoustic analysis app for pitch stability, heart rate in the 5 minutes before going on stage. Define a time box. 4 shows with breath versus 4 without. Alternating. Define a simple analysis. Averages, trends, small notes on context. What it tells you. Whether your intervention is likely helping you, not people in general. It protects you from hunches that lie. Warning: do not chase significance or perfection. Do not jam so many measures into your life that you can't live it. Practice. 1 micro-study per month. Share the results with a friend. The act of explaining clarifies your own view. Pack these 7, and you have a kit sturdy enough to carry across different terrains. Now, let's go to those terrains. Workbenches in the world. On stage, Mara's ritual. Context. Live performance multiplies arousal. The goal is not to be calm, it is to be coherent, aroused enough to be alive, steady enough to be true. Toolkit. Breath plus microjournal plus behavior scan plus minimal lab. Ritual. T. 60 minutes. Check the affect grid. If arousal high and valence neutral, negative, schedule a breath set at T10. T15. Behavior scan in mirror. Jaw, shoulders, pace. Release jaw on exhale. Drop shoulders. Choose first sentence tempo, slower by 10%. T10. 4, 1, 6 breath. For 3 minutes, T2. Meaning, check. This spike is fuel. The first verse is a conversation. Post-show. 2 lines. Felt buzzy, breath helped, opening pitch steadier. Heart rate trace saved. Measurement. Not whether she was anxious, but whether the ritual moved the opening minute from brittle to resonant. Over a month, Mara saw that on nights with poor sleep, she needed 5 minutes of breathing. After long travel, a 20-minute nap mattered more than any breath. When a friend stood in the wings and smiled, her HRV rose even without breath work. The numbers met meaning and made a map. Ethics. Consent for recordings. Clear boundaries with the engineer. Data is hers. No shaming of spikes. In a classroom, Leo's math hour. Context. Children's bodies speak before their words do. The goal is to prevent overwhelm and preserve curiosity. Toolkit. Effect grid stickers plus simple HR monitor, optional, plus trigger routine reward, plus social co-regulation. Routine. Start of math. Leo places a magnet on a large class-wide valence arousal grid. No names, only placement. Teacher glances. 3 kids in high arousal, negative, preps breaks. Cue. Leo's foot tapping starts. Trigger. Teacher approaches, palm down cue to slow. Routine swap. Instead of shutting down, Leo wall pushes 10 reps, then picks the funny prompt card. Reward. A small laugh, arousal drops. He re-engages. Weekly review. Teacher and Leo review patterns. Wednesdays tougher after soccer. Mornings easier after oatmeal than donuts. A window seat helps. Measurement. Not a grade, not a diagnosis. A pattern library that protects learning. Ethics. The grid is class culture, not surveillance. Children can opt out. No child's data leaves the room. The point is support, not sorting. In a clinic, a panic spiral. Context. A patient experiences sudden surges of dread with breathlessness and chest tightness. The goal is to pair subjective experience with body signals to discover levers. Toolkit. EMA pings plus breath, CO2 awareness plus HRV trend plus appraisals. Plan. EMA. 3 daily pings. Valence, arousal, context. Any spiral since last ping. Physiology. A week of breath counts. Instruction on slow exhale and paced breath. Optional capnography session to detect CO2 sensitivity. Appraisal work. Spiral narratives written down, then 3 alternate appraisals rehearsed. Exposure. Graded exposure to spiral contexts. Elevator, crowded store, with breath and appraisals at the ready. Measurement. Spiral frequency and intensity. Time to recover. Sleep quality. Over 4 weeks, the patient learns. Spirals cluster after skipped breakfast. Fast talking precedes them. The "I'm going to faint" appraisal spikes arousal more than "this is a wave that passes." Interventions are tuned accordingly. Ethics. All data owned by the patient. Clinician uses copies with consent. Sensitive context discussed explicitly. In design. Fixing a frustrating flow. Context. A product team wants to reduce user frustration on a sign-up flow. Toolkit. Micro journals from usability tests plus voice, prosody analysis with consent, plus screen events, plus post-task valence, arousal check. Protocol. Participants narrate in plain language, then complete the flow silently. Prosody and pace measured, micro pauses marked, screen recordings correlate spikes with UI elements. After each task, Participants place a dot on a valence arousal card and write one sentence. The help text blamed me. Measurement. Not just task completion time, moments of felt friction. The team learns that a single sentence, "You must have done X wrong tanks valence in otherwise smooth flows." Change it to, "Let's try a different way." And the valence map brightens. Numbers translate into kinder words. Kinder words change outcomes. Ethics. Participants can review and delete their recordings. No biometric inference without explicit, informed consent. In a relationship, kinder fights. Context. Two partners who love each other but escalate quickly. The goal is not no conflict. It is fights that heal rather than scar. Toolkit. 2-axis check-ins plus co-regulation cues plus appraisals plus minimal lab. Ritual. Before difficult topics. Each partner places a magnet on a private valence arousal card and shares the location in words amped and neutral. If both are high arousal, negative, reschedule, or take 5 minutes of breath during conflict. Agreed cues. A tap to indicate, "I need a pause." A hand over heart to indicate, "I'm with you even as we disagree." Appraisals. When default story is, "You don't care," practice 2 plausible alternatives aloud. Minimal lab. Try 2 conflicts with a 5-minute pause midpoint versus 2 without. Debrief, which led to reconciliation. Measurement. Time to apology. Feeling of closeness after conflicts. Whether the same fight repeats untouched. Over a month, they notice that any fight after 10 p.m. spirals. They commit to earlier talks or to scheduling the next morning. Ethics. No weaponizing measures. No, your dot is wrong. No HRV shaming. Measurement serves tenderness. In a city, designing for calm and agency. Context. Urban planners want public spaces that soothe rather than fray. Toolkit. EMA from volunteers plus sound level meters plus footfall counts plus short on-site valence arousal taps. Protocol. Volunteers agree to be pinged when entering major plazas or transit hubs. They tap the affect grid and write one sentence. Too loud. Nowhere to stand out of the flow. Planners correlate spikes of negative arousal with sound peaks, bottlenecks, lack of seating, interventions. More benches, rerouted foot traffic, plantings that muffle noise, posted signs that reduce uncertainty. Measurement. Valence, arousal shift before versus after changes, dwell time, complaint volume. The city learns that adding a simple display, "Next train in 3 minutes," raises valence even when waits are longer. Information is a regulator. Ethics. Opt-in volunteers only. Data anonymized. Public reporting centered on design changes, not citizen traits. In each of these terrains, the toolkit flexes around the same pillars. A few honest self-measures, a few observable behaviors, a few body rhythms, and a loop that turns measurement into kinder action. Keeping the instruments honest. Any instrument can fool you if you let it. Here is how to keep yours straight. Reliability. Do we get the same reading when we should? If a scale reads wildly different numbers for the same stone, it is useless. In practice, does your quick feelings checklist give similar patterns week to week when life is similar? Does your HRV track show plausible trends rather than jagged nonsense? If not, check timing, sleep, caffeine, device fit, and context. Standardize what you can. Validity. Are we measuring what we think? If your Anxiety measure is really how much coffee you drank. It will mislead. Cross-check measures: do high arousal self-reports co-occur with breath rate increases and context you recognize? Use convergent and discriminant habits without the jargon. Look for agreement where you expect it and disagreement where you should. Sensitivity to change. Can the tool detect a shift? If a ritual helps but your instrument is too coarse to notice, you'll abandon it. Make measures granular enough. 110 can be more responsive than 1.5, and keep logs long enough to see trends. Burden. Can you carry it? If your measurement plan is so heavy that you drop it in a week, it fails. Pare back. Keep the things you actually use. Bias. What does the tool assume? Culture, language, and body differences matter. If your checklist words don't fit you, change the words. If facial reading software fails on your face or your communities, don't use it. Your tool should honor your reality. When algorithms enter the room, sooner or later, someone will offer you a dashboard that predicts your mood from keystrokes or webcam micro-expressions. Resist the seduction of a single score. Here's how to interrogate such tools. What is the training data? Which faces, voices, languages, and bodies taught the model? If it didn't learn from people like you, it will guess wrong about you. What is it actually predicting? Often, it predicts arousal, not specific emotions. Arousal is real and useful. It is not the whole story. What's the false positive cost? In a clinical setting, a false sadness alert might bother you. In a workplace, it could be harmful. Demand a role for human judgment. Where does the data live? Who owns it? How is it secured? How long is it kept? Can you delete it? These are not bonus questions. They are the center. A good algorithm is a microscope. It can reveal patterns you can't see unaided. A bad algorithm is a prophecy. It claims to know your heart better than you do. Keep microscopes. Refuse prophecies. Ethics. The bright frame around the work. We measure emotions to care better, perform truer, design kinder, and heal gentler. The moment measurement serves control, punishment, or extraction, it warps. First principle, consent. Not the checkbox kind, the informed, revocable kind. People can say no and still belong. Second, transparency. Tell people what you're measuring, why, how it will be used, and what will not be done. Third, data minimization. Gather as little as needed to help. If a weekly valence check suffices, don't add webcams. Fourth, purpose-bound use. Data gathered for coaching should not migrate to evaluation. A student's regulation plan should not become a label. Fifth, reciprocity. If you measure others, give back. Insight, support, changes that improve their lives. Sixth, dignity. No one's worth is a number. If a tool shames, redesign or discard it. A craftsperson's workflow. Think like a builder. Clarify the aim. What hurts? What would better look like? Name this. In plain language, I want to stop snapping at my kids before dinner. Select 2 or 3 measures. 1 self-report, 1 behavior, 1 body. Evening valence, arousal dot. Partner's cue, if my voice sharpens. 3 minutes of breath pre-dinner. Establish a baseline. 1 week with no changes, just observation. Introduce 1 lever, not 5. 1, breathe, or change the story, or adjust the environment snack before cooking to avoid hunger rage. Observe for 2 weeks. Are we closer to the aim? If yes, keep. If no, swap the lever. Scale slowly. Add one more lever if needed. Keep measure burden low. Review monthly. Celebrate wins. Retire measures that no longer help. Tools are seasonal. This workflow honors complexity without becoming a cage. It keeps autonomy with the person. It treats numbers as companions, not commanders. A small atlas of everyday scenarios. The commute spike. You enter the subway already tense. Measure. Valence. Arousal before gate. Breath pace. One sentence after the ride. Lever. Playlist that starts slower than your heart and ends slower. Exhale brighten breath during delays, meaning frame, I'll arrive when I arrive. Check. Do you step onto the platform less brittle? The email avalanche. Inbox floods. You freeze, then rage. Measure. Minutes of delay before first reply. Self-rated overwhelm 110. Shoulder scan. Lever. 2-minute triage rule archive. Star reply later or reply in 2 sentences now. 3 appraisals for the one that hooked you. Check. Rage curve softening. Shoulders lower. The hard goodbye. A friend moves away. Grief feels like a leak you can't plug. Measure. Valence. 3 times daily. Sleep quality. Walks taken. Lever. Scheduled grief walks where you cry on purpose. Letter writing ritual. Co-regulation with a friend. Check. Less surprised by waves, more capacity to float with them. The big exam. A student's hands shake. Measure. EMA pings week before. Breath. HRV morning of. Lever. Practice exams at the same hour. Breath ritual. Post-exam ritual with friend. Check. Does anticipatory dread shrink? Does recovery quicken? The new parent. Exhaustion erases patience. Measure. Sleep debt. Arousal before bedtime routine. Partner's cue. Lever. Micro naps. Trading shifts. Meaning frame. This is hard because it's precious. Check. Not perfection. 1 fewer snap, 1 more laugh. None of these erase emotion. They make room for it to breathe without breaking the furniture. The limits that make us human. Even the best toolkit will fail sometimes. Grief lingers. Anger blooms. A body panics for reasons you can't name. In those moments, measurements can remind you of something tender. You are not a machine to be tuned. You are a creature to be accompanied. Numbers can accompany. They can tell you, this has happened before, and you lived. They can tell you, sleep is thin, be gentler. They can tell you, your breath is small, make it bigger. They can tell you, you are not alone. Other bodies do this, too. They cannot tell you whether to forgive, whether to leave, whether to sing tonight, or save your voice for the morning. Those answers come from the part of you that measurement serves but never replaces, the closing of the circle. On an autumn night, at the end of tour, Mara stood in the wings again. The ritual was a groove in her bones now, not a checklist. Breath softer, shoulders lower, first sentence slower, meaning kind. The engineer still clipped the sensor, but it felt like friend, not judge. The green line rose in a hill rather than a spike. Backstage, an older singer she admired watched. I used to drink a shot before walking out, the singer said, half a joke. Now I do what you do. I watched you make your feeling your ally. Mara smiled. I just learned to listen earlier. Later, halfway through the third song, a song she had written in a kitchen that smelled of lemon and grief, She felt the old ache rise, the one that sometimes tightened her throat. She did what numbers had taught her to do without numbers. She reached her hand toward the piano, grounding through the wood, lengthened her exhale between lines, let the appraisal tilt from "I will break" to "I am breaking open." The note came out true, not perfect, true. When the show ended, she wrote one line in her micro-journal, "Gentle hill, the room breathed with me." The engineer hugged her. The older singer squeezed her shoulder. People filing into the street looked as if they had been inside something warm. This is the end of our question and the beginning of your craft. Can emotions be measured? Yes, when we measure like gardeners, not harvesters, like cartographers, not conquerors, like friends, not spies. Yes, when we measure the way sailors measure the wind, not to command it, but to set a better sail. So, gather your kit, a few honest words, a few careful observations, a few breaths, a few rhythms. Choose a place in your life that hurts or thrills. Ask it to teach you. Take one measure. Make one change. Watch, adjust, repeat. And when the green line spikes on a stage, in a kitchen, at a desk, in a crowded train, remember, the line is not your worth. It is a finger pointing at the weather. You are the one who decides whether to run for shelter, dance in the rain, or tilt your face to the sky and sing,